And action.
After you.
Saji Puki Jishin Metotram Rirolin Shin Indegam Padi Sangha Shindu Miteguagi Drokun Namda Shinla Chiparsho Idam Gudatnamandalakam Ninyatayami Sangha Jidam Soki Chognam Lam Janshu Bardu Dakni Gavsuji Daki Junyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Benshir Sangha Drupasha Sangha Jidam Soki Chognam La Janshu Vardu Dakni Gavsuchi Daki Chunyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Benshir Sangha Drupasha Sangha Jidam Soki Chognam La Janshu Vardu Dakni Gavsuchi Daki Chunyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Benshir Sangha Drupasha.
So welcome, and we'll begin with just a short breathing meditation to try to bring the mind into a more relaxed and neutral place. So sitting with your spine straight, please simply focus on the sensation of the air passing in and out past the tips of the nostrils. Count 7 rounds, 1 exhalation and 1 inhalation being a round, beginning on the exhalation. If you lose focus and you think about other things, or if your mind is drawn away from that awareness, please go back to the beginning and start again at 1. Now please bring your awareness and your mind to the holiest being you can conceive. Think of them. Get a feeling for them. Ask them to be here with you, to join you here now. And in your heart, feel their presence or see them in your mind's eye. In front of you in the space, looking at you sweetly. And you can honor them by bowing down and prostrating to them. And make some kind of exquisite offering to them. Something beautiful you hold in your heart. something precious. Recall a good quality you possess. Think about your greatest goodness. Feel very happy about it, intensely happy and joyous about it. And offer that to them. Think about your greatest negativity or affliction, the worst thing that you tend to do, and see it clearly. Recognize it's hurting people rather than helping them, creating suffering for others and yourself. Reflect upon how your expression and engaging in that causes you pain in that moment, and will cause you pain in the future as the karma ripens upon you again. Decide to restrain yourself for a manageable, specific, finite length of time, and to not do that thing. Be realistic. Resolve not to do it for a minute or an hour or a day, but be sure that you restrain yourself for that period. Think of an opposing activity, a positive counteraction, something good that you can do to offset that negative habit. What would be the opposite of that? Conceive of it clearly. Again, resolve to engage in that within a specific, finite period of time. Now bring your awareness to the holy being who is here with you, the one you are closest to. And in your heart, ask them to stay close, to always guide you, to remain by your side every step of the way, helping you, showing you what to do. And again, from your heart, ask them to bring you to the end of every suffering, to teach you and guide you to complete enlightenment and paradise quickly in this life. And you see them smiling and happily agreeing, and they become smaller and glowing in light, brighter and brighter, and take up residence above your head as a crown ornament facing forward, giving you their blessings, remaining with you. So thank you for coming, holy beings. I'm going to pass out the candy until after the meditation. Since you came for Valentine's, night. Thought the least we could do is have our Valentine's chocolates together, right?
Are there any quizzes going around? Extra quizzes?
Extra quizzes, anyone going around? And since there are announcements, if there is anybody who wasn't on the email list, who was not here last week, please add your name to the side that says Class 2.
So if you were not here before and you don't know the drill, we have each class has a homework and quiz and reading associated with it. It's not mandatory, but it does go a long way towards helping learn the material. So anyone who is more serious and committed to learning the material is taking a quiz from last week's class material. And so we do that at the beginning of each class, briefly. So after we're finished with the quiz, then we will kick off tonight's class. Any spare quizzes?
We're printing some more.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Anyone else? Quiz.
There's one right here. There's another one.
If you can write backwards.
Thank you.
More chocolates.
Yeah, peanut butter in the middle.
Extra surprise treat.
Take away what?
Would you like more?
Oh,
Thank you. You got some?
That's my dad's birthday. Weird. Just remind me about the babysit.
Yeah, great.
I was trying to make it work for the birthday, but missed it.
Anytime.
Just let me know.
Okay. And is everyone done with their chocolates and or quiz? Chocolate yes, please no. No.
Nobody signed up. Unless you think it's late.
We'll just give people jobs. Like they'll, like we're deciding then who does what. It's like a plan.
Better than the mime class on Thursdays. The yell.
He's screaming down there. Who's collecting the quizzes for Brady?
It's Maria and Barbara.
Barbara?
Did everyone sign this that wants to sign this? The roster.
Email list?
It's the email list
Yeah.
for. No, it's the same as last week. If you didn't receive an email last week, it's because your email address wasn't typed in correctly or you're not on the list.
Maria.
We're ready? I think we're ready. Yeah. So please say Jamchu.
Jamchu.
Semke.
Semke.
So Jamchu stands for Bodhi, which is Sanskrit for enlightenment, right? And Sem means mind. Chitta in Sanskrit. So Bodhicitta. K means to develop the state of mind. So developing a state of mind that wants to reach enlightenment, right? That's what we're talking about. And we're going to talk about it tonight in a very specific context. We're going to talk about bodhicitta and the mind that wishes for complete enlightenment. We're going to talk about it in the context, in a very specific context. And to understand it, you have to understand something called the 5 paths. Okay, and the path in Buddhist philosophy has a very specific meaning. I mean, what would you guess path is referring to? Path in the forest? It's like Arthur's quest, you find the right 5 paths and you reach enlightenment in the golden chalice. No? Something like that. Pat, what were we saying, Paul?
The way.
The way? The path is a way?
To enlightenment.
Path is a way to enlightenment. You have to find the right path in the forest to get to enlightenment.
Practices that will bring you there?
Practices that can bring you there? Any other?
State of mind.
Steps, states of mind. So we, in the context that we use it, it means a realization, a specific realization or understanding. Okay, and I think often, I know for myself, when I hear the word realization, I think of like bright lights, some mystical bright light happening somewhere somehow, like in meditation. And realizations can occur in a lot of different ways, on a lot of different levels. They can be large or small. I mean, we can have like a little small realization of, I'm too fat, going bald. I mean, it's not profound, but it's a realization, right? So, a lot of possible realizations. We're talking about 5 specific realizations, which are important spiritual benchmarks, important spiritual guideposts or levels of attainment. And so these are specific realizations which denote you've reached another level or another place in your practice. You've advanced to a very significant threshold in your practice and in your path. Okay? So in a sense, they're levels of spiritual development. You could call them, these are 5 levels of spiritual development, right? And every person goes through these same 5 levels of spiritual development to reach enlightenment. If you're going to reach Buddhahood, you must go through these 5. And we don't know who's on which level or path, right? I mean, some of you may be on the 1st level or the 3rd level or the 5th level. I don't know. You may all just be coming here to humor me and help me out so that I have something virtuous to do on a Tuesday night, right? So I have no idea who's who's like Master Shantideva putting on a good show and just saying, I'll just show up and no one will be the wiser, right? So anyway, sooner or later, everybody has to go through these 5 paths to put an end to their suffering and reach enlightenment. So we'll go through the 5 paths, okay? Please say Soklam.
Soklam.
And Sok means accumulation, right? When we do Sechu, it's a Sok. And Lam is path. So in each case, it means path here as we go through it. So this is the path of accumulation. And it's actually very hard to get to the first path in one's Buddhist career and practice. I think when we talk about numbered sequences, the natural tendency is to think, step 1. I've been coming to class for years. I got step 1. I must be at least on step 3. It's been 3 years, right? I got to be past step 1, right? So I think there's a natural tendency amongst all of us to say, like, no, I'm not lower, I'm higher. No, I'm not in the beginning. I'm at least in the middle, right? So it's not quite that random and that sort of aspirational. It's about what one is actually realized, right? It's about realization meaning internalization, one's internal state, and whether one is sort of understanding and thinking and living congruently with this internal state and state of awareness, right? So when we talk about the path of accumulation, the first one, it's referring to real renunciation. And when you reach real renunciation, you have that realization of renunciation means you're on the first path. You've made it to the first threshold or the first step of the Buddhist path. Right? And it's very hard to get there. It's very hard to reach real renunciation. I remember when they were doing 3-year retreat last time, and at the end of 3-year retreat, I went to visit the retreat. It's just as they finished, and I went in, sat with Lama Trisoma in her yurt. It was very beautiful and very sweet. And she had just finished 3+ years of meditation. We're sitting there talking about renunciation. And it's just like, I mean, imagine not wanting to think of chocolate as chocolate. Imagine not wanting to think about a cup of hot cocoa as something pleasurable from its own side. Imagine not having the concept that this thing is desirable from its own side, and to shift the way I relate to everything in the world, and to think about everything in the world in a completely different context, you know. If I have renunciation, I'm not motivated by conventional dictates, conventional definitions. I'm motivated by my ultimate goals. You know, I'm motivated by my understanding of ethics and karma and emptiness and all the other component pieces of the spiritual path, right? And so when I look at anything, whether it's a person or an object or an interaction, it's not about, ooh, this is a piece of chocolate which I can eat. I already ate 3, I can't eat it. You know, it's not like, ooh, this is a piece of chocolate that holds delights within the wrapper, you know, and I'm going to unwrap this and enjoy these delights because the chocolate holds the delights, and I'm like chocolate and I'm motivated to get chocolate, and I'm going to go do the things necessary to get chocolate, you know. And so one's whole way of being in the world and one's whole way of relating to every existing thing in the world has to change, you know, if one has true renunciation. It's about saying, I'm letting go of everything. I'm letting go of relating to everything as we ordinarily see it and as we ordinarily relate to it, you know. So I'm relating to everything on a higher level, in a higher way, with a different thought process, you know, which we'll talk about. It's very, the texts say that it's very useful if someone close to you dies, helps you get renunciation. Master Gampopa, when he was a layperson, his wife died, and then he began to develop real true renunciation, and then he actually said to his wife's brother that he was glad she died because it enabled him to get real renunciation, and of course threw dirt in his face and otherwise took exception with the statement. But you know, you can see it from both sides. The idea is that we're not really serious. We're not really taking the limitations of this life and the downsides of this life seriously, because there are too many distractions. There's too much entertainment. There's too much potential fun to be had, right? So, seemingly, I'm talking about it, right? So, but we're not. You know, it's what we talked about last week and previously. You know, if you think carefully right now at this moment, every good thing or any good thing we have in our life we're going to lose, right? Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how long we've had it, right? I mean, if we're healthy, if we have good friends, if we have a good partner, if we have great kids, if we have money in the bank, a nice place to live, you know, on and on and on. It doesn't matter, you know. We're on the way to losing it sooner or later. And it's really just a matter of time, you know. Something's going to tear it away from us. And there are forces at work which are actively doing that. And it's inexorable and it's inescapable, you know. We must lose those things. So reaching this path of accumulation, true renunciation, is the process of becoming realistic about these facts, about these circumstances, you know. I mean, it's very painful to lose things, right? We have things and we want to keep them. You know, we want to keep our partners if they're good, if we like them. You know, we want to keep our bank account full. We want to keep our nice objects. You know, we want to keep our health. We want to keep our life. There's so many things we want to keep, right? And yet, each and every thing will be lost, definitely. And it's very painful when it happens. And maybe it'll happen sooner. Maybe it'll happen later. You know, I mean, I want stability. I want certainty. I want predictability. I want comfort. You know, and it's very unpleasant, very painful to lose those things and to not have those things. And it's just a fact of life, unfortunately, that will occur. And so as we approach the first path, we start to get realistic about it. It's in front of us all day long, but we don't want to acknowledge it and we don't want to see it. You know, it's all around us. I mean, you see it in the streets, you see it in the subways, you see it at work, you see it everywhere, right? Sooner or later, we'll lose everything. And it's easy to tune it out, even though it's all around us. But if we're going to make it to the first path, we have to internalize it. We have to see it and understand it and internalize it in a way where we're living differently and we're thinking differently. So, and it's very difficult. But sooner or later, everything that we have down to our name is lost, and will be torn away from us. You know, I mean, our photos will disappear. You know, our very bodies will turn to dust. Our very names will disappear. Our memory will disappear. It's only a matter of time, and it's a fairly short period of time. You know, I mean, soon enough there'll be no trace of us, even down to name, body, memory, photo, and that's it. So it'll all be torn away. So, and we start to see it at a certain point. I don't know, maybe it's around 40, maybe it's around 50. I don't know when it occurs for most people. But as we get older, we see it more and more clearly. Oh yeah, I won't last forever. Of course, don't tell it to my mother. She's 78 and still says she's not going to die, even though she's got. Never mind. There's a natural human tendency to say, no. I mean, I don't see any of it. Everything's fine. Everything will always be fine. Nothing bad will ever happen to me. I don't have to worry. And if anything bad happens to me, it'll just be a little small bump in the road. And so very easy to be in denial in that way. So, but you can't get anywhere in Buddhism until you start to admit the fact that everything is impermanent, everything is lost, everything is torn away from us. And so, some people say Buddhism is depressing because the focus and the emphasis upon this. And this, people interview the Dalai Lama and they say, "Oh, Your Holiness, Buddhism is so depressing. You're always talking about you're going to lose everything, you're going to die, everything is suffering." And he laughs and he says, "Look, if you stop lying to yourself, it's liberating." He has that giggle. He's like, "It's very liberating if you're not lying to yourself. When you stop pretending that it's not the way that it really is, it's kind of a relief, It's kind of a relief to just go, yeah, everything is going to screw up and I'm going to lose everything and everything's going to fall apart and I don't know when, maybe sooner, maybe later. I can just relax into it now, Doesn't make it any less painful, and we'll talk about that. But, the point is that it will happen. And it's it's happening even as we speak. Every minute that goes by, we're a minute closer to death and a minute closer to the breakdown of our body and mind and things we cherish. So when you understand that, right? When you have that understanding, then you have some kind of motivation to make efforts, right? I mean, if we truly understand that everything that we possess is doomed, including our very name and our body and mind and our existence and our memory, it's all doomed, Well, then what are we living for, and what motivates us, and what is our focus, and what is our goal, and what are we spending our life energy and our time upon, right? And so this is the idea of spiritual things, hopefully, higher things which will last long term, hopefully forever, right? And so that brings us to spend time and energy on our spiritual path, and to hopefully start to work on the second path. Please say Jorlam.
Jorlam.
Jor means preparation. Lam again is path. The path of preparation is marked by 4 stages. And what are we preparing to do in the path of preparation? Does anybody remember?
Prepare to see emptiness directly.
Yeah, we're studying higher reality, or the nature of ultimate reality, which is also called emptiness. So on the path of preparation, we're preparing to experience higher reality, a higher spiritual reality, which is called emptiness or suchness or ultimate reality, right? So it's a process. It's not something you crack a book and you read a book and then you say, oh, now I got it, right? It's something which takes a lot of time and a lot of study and a lot of effort and a lot of contemplation. And when one has done that well, then one attains certain realizations, not direct experience of ultimate reality or emptiness, but it's marked by 4 stages. There are 4 different levels of intellectual understanding of emptiness. And so as one studies more and contemplates more and practices more, one gains a higher and higher and more sophisticated understanding of emptiness and ultimate reality. So this path is marked by going through those 4 stages, and in each stage you understand emptiness more deeply in an intellectual way. Okay? And so that prepares one for the next path, which is, please say, Tonglam. Tonglam. So Tong is seeing, the path of seeing. And so this path also is divided into parts. So in the first instant of the path of seeing, one, in a deep state of meditation, perceives emptiness, aka ultimate reality, directly, right? And so one has developed the realization of the first path, i.e. that all the things that normally motivate us in this life are limited and doomed to be lost and fail us sooner or later, and therefore puts their time and energy into studying higher reality and ultimate reality and becoming conversant and fluent and well-versed in it. And one understands it in a deeper and more profound way, to the point where one is then able to have a direct experience of it in deep meditation on the third path. And so when one is able to have a direct experience of emptiness, one has achieved the third path, the path of seeing, referring to seeing emptiness. Okay? And so in the first instant of seeing emptiness directly, one has achieved that path. Okay? And so that can only happen in a deep state of meditation. It's not referring to some intellectual, discursive knowledge or understanding of emptiness. Okay? It's referring purely to a direct seeing, a direct non-conceptual communing of the mind with ultimate reality. Okay? And so, it's called the path of seeing, but it doesn't involve seeing in the visual sense or in a visual capacity. So the path of seeing in that respect is perhaps a little bit of a misnomer, in that it's not about the eyeballs and visions. Okay, it's a mental experience. It's a pure mind experience, not involving the senses. And when one has the experience, the mind is completely withdrawn from all of the senses, and the mind is actually completely disengaged from the senses and the sensory input, and it's purely a mental awareness and purely a mental experience. Okay, and it's not conceptual. It's not thought-based. So when one sees emptiness, one isn't having a thought, "Oh, that's emptiness," right? It's a non-conceptual experience, and as one practices meditation and as one does retreats, one starts to gain familiarity with this state of mind, or this experience of non-conceptual awareness. As one getting that look. Yeah.
Well, if it's not perceptual, it's not conceptual.
Oh, no, I didn't say it's not perceptual.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
you're
it's not like
perceiving.
seeing.
It's not visual.
Like visual perception, like
Yeah.
out of the five senses.
Right.
So it's not conceptual. So, So is it like? Would you use the word realizing? I guess not, because that's
Sure, you can say
conceptual
realizing.
also.
Realizing's okay. But again, it's you have to be clear about the language and the implication and the meaning of the language. So if one is, let's say one is doing consistent, regular meditation practice every day in retreat, right? One can go into, one can close one's eyes and sit nicely and engage in a mental process, right? And it might be visualization, or it might be single-pointed concentration, or it might be abiding in a certain feeling state, perhaps. And so it's possible to abide in a meditative state where one's not thinking discursive thoughts, right? I like that, I don't like that, isn't this cool? I wonder how much longer I'll go before I stop, or whatever the thought process might be. It's quite typical in meditation practice to engage the mind in a non-conceptual exercise, you might say, especially as one advances further along in their practice. So in the beginning, the meditation practice can be, and usually is, very discursive. Let me think about this, and but then as the mind becomes more and more subtle, the coarser minds are left behind, in that they cease to function. They're not functioning. And one can go down to more and more and more and more subtle levels of mind, such that one is, should we say, inhabiting or abiding in a much more subtle level of mental awareness, or abiding, or I don't want to say existence, but you get the idea. And they're not inhabiting the coarser levels of minds, which we normally think of as our mind in the in our outer life, right? So that's the general idea with meditation. Yeah.
Is this something that once you have it, you continue to have it, or is it fleeting?
Which is it?
This emptiness.
Once you have the experience, the direct experience of emptiness, it can only happen in a very deep state of meditation. In fact, one's mind has to be on a certain level of reality. One's mind has to be sort of at a certain platform to have the experience and the perception of it. And so that experience and that perception only occurs in a very deep state of meditation. And so when one comes out of that deep state of meditation, then that communing experience is not occurring anymore, because it's a non-conceptual direct experience. In our world is a thought, concept, discursive, dualistic based world and reality. You know, we're sitting here saying, I'm a man, you're a woman, that's up, that's down, that's left, that's right, this is inside me, that's outside me, you know, this is good, that's bad, this is my thought, I love, you know, I mean, you know, thoughts watching the thinker, etc. So there's this endless discursive process, conceptual elaboration that goes on in our normal life. And at the level of ultimate reality or emptiness, it is a level of reality where our conceptual thoughts don't exist. It's a level of reality where conceptualizations, I don't want to say don't apply, that's not quite it. There are no conceptualizations. It's a state of reality without conceptualization. So if one can't conceive it, that's why one has to have the experience in meditation. We'll talk about it. But if you can imagine a realm, a way of being, an existence where it's not thought-based, it's not word-based, it's not language-based, it's not conceptual elaboration-based. You know, I mean, it exists. There's something there. It's highest profound reality. But all of the normal mental conceptualizations and elaborations which we use in our world are completely inappropriate or inadequate or irrelevant or don't exist there. So that helps in some way. So that experience, when one has it the first time, one develops the mental capacity to place one's mind as pure mental awareness, non-discursive, non-conceptual mental awareness. One develops the ability to place one's mind at this particular level of subtlety and refinement, and clarity and purity and stillness. And then from that platform, one is able to have the direct experience of that pure, highest level of reality. And that typically is a 20-minute experience, it's said. And then one is in that meditative state, and when one is in that meditative state, one isn't thinking, oh, that was 20 minutes and I'm almost done, because that's discursive thought, which doesn't exist in that place, right? And one isn't thinking, oh, I'm seeing ultimate reality, you know, because again, that's discursive thought, which doesn't exist at that level. So it's a pure mental, non-conceptual, not language-based, experience, right? And when one comes out of that experience, then one has entered into the second part of the path of seeing. The path of seeing has two parts. So in the first moment of the path of seeing, the first instant that one perceives ultimate reality, one is now realized the path of seeing, and then one's in that direct perception of emptiness and ultimate reality for however long the meditation lasts, and they come out of the meditation, and then when they come out of the meditation, they're then on to the subsequent second part of the path of seeing. Okay? And the second stage. So that leads to the next path, Gomlam. We say Gomlam, which is the path of habituation. So Gom is also a Tibetan word that means to meditate, because in meditation one habituates one's mind by doing something over and over again. Right? When you meditate, you get your mind used to the object by placing your mind on the object over and over again. And the more you meditate on the object, the more the mind gets used to it, and the easier it is for the mind to focus and bring that up. Right? So the fourth path means to habituate yourself to something. And what is it that we're habituating ourselves to?
What you just experienced.
Yeah, what we saw earlier, right? So we had this experience of a complete other higher level of reality that was completely unfamiliar to us, never perceived before. And then we come out of that experience in that realm, and then we go like, oh, damn, Well, I probably wouldn't say, oh damn. I'd probably say, oh joy. You know, say, wow, you know, I perceived ultimate reality. You know, I'm an Arya. You know, I'm on the path of seeing. It's a profound thing. And so when one comes out of that, the conceptual mind resumes, and the language resumes, and the normal thought processes resume, right? But on the fourth path, we have to habituate ourselves to that other level of reality, because we've lived our entire lives, we've lived countless past lives according to apparent conventional reality. And now we've perceived highest reality, and it's up to now is a completely foreign thing to us, completely unfamiliar thing. So now here we are, you know, all of a sudden going like, damn, that's what it's really all about. That's what really ultimately is there, and the rest is, you know, the illusion and Maya and, you know, whatever you want to say about it. And oh my God, now I have to live according to what I know to be ultimate truth, rather than the suffering illusion of the life that we normally live. And I don't want to sling those words around too much because they're loaded. But the idea is, with the path of habituation, is we're going to then retrain ourselves from that day on going forward to live differently, think differently, and behave differently, right? Because we now have a new reality, a higher reality, to live in congruence with, right? So, based upon knowing for a fact what the ultimate absolute truth is, we then have a basis to say, well, I better damn well be living that way and thinking that way and behaving that way, right? So this is the path of habituation. When we come out of the experience of the path of seeing, we then have, you know, a long period of time where we have to retrain ourselves and rehabituate ourselves so that we are living in alignment with that higher level of reality, right? And in many respects, it's no different than our Buddhist training from day one. It's like, got all these bad habits, got all these things that I do that I shouldn't be doing, you know, and I'm trying to train myself to stop all the stuff I should be stopping, and I'm trying to train myself to do all the things I should be doing, and just continue on. Except having had this experience, we now our efforts become supercharged. You know, we have the rocket fuel to move us forward at a really accelerated rate, because having had this realization and having had this direct experience, we now know for a fact, we have the realization, the internal experience, the congruent awareness that this is it, and it is nothing but this, and I have to do this because this is it, you know. I mean, it's like, I mean, that's kind of a bad example, but it's like, you know, holding your finger in a fire and going like, damn, that burned me. And then saying, I know for a fact fire burns me. I know for a fact I'm not going to stick my finger in the fire. Same thing, you know, you see ultimate reality, you know for a fact what the truth is. And it'd be like sticking your finger in a fire. It would be stupid, you know, because you know for a fact what fire does to your finger. So, negative example, but you get the idea, I hope. Anyway, so the idea is that you understand, as a result of the path of seeing, that you have to practice properly to achieve your spiritual goals, and in order to reach special goals. So we're habituating ourselves to what we saw in the path of seeing. We're habituating ourselves to ultimate reality. We're habituating ourselves to living in congruence with ultimate reality, according to what we've seen and what we know to be true, ultimately, right? And so it takes a while. I mean, did you ever try to stop smoking or eating cookies? Or it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Doesn't happen at all.
Well, this is kind of the same idea, but you know, it's going to happen, Bruce, okay? It's going to happen. Might take a couple of lifetimes, but it's going to happen, right? So, the point here is that you know, we're just practicing over and over again, applying this knowledge to everyday life. I have to change my behavior, and it's a very powerful motivation or basis to be able to do it. You know, it's like, imagine if, like, every time you lit up, you burn your finger. You know, well, you wouldn't light up as much. You know, it's kind of like so. Anyway, the path of the fourth path, the path of habituation, prepares one for the next path. Please say Milob Lam.
Milob Lam.
And that's the fifth path. Milob means no more study, no more learning. And if you have a certain state of mind, then you attain Buddhahood at this point on the fifth path. If one reaches the fifth path with a certain thoughts or certain state of mind present, then one becomes fully enlightened. If one does not have certain thoughts, certain state of mind present in their mental continuum, then they do not attain full enlightenment. They attain nirvana. Okay, and so what's the difference between enlightenment and nirvana, right? Does anybody remember the definition of nirvana? Yeah, go for it.
Permanent
cessation of all mental afflictions.
Right.
Permanent cessation of all mental afflictions.
Due to the power of the individual analysis.
Due to the power of the individual analysis, which is referring to
what you experience after the second part of the path of seeing once you come out of the direct perception of emptiness, the four aerial truths.
Very nice. Well done.
Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. So, yeah, and there's a Tibetan word, sosor, which means one by one. By realizing something one by one. And so the thing that they're talking about that has to be realized one by one are the four Arya truths, sometimes mistranslated as the Four Noble Truths, right? And so Arya is a word that's used in Buddhist philosophy to mean someone who's seen emptiness directly. You know, and all beings in existence are divided into two categories. Those who are considered children and those who are considered Aryas. Aryas are those who have perceived highest reality, ultimate reality, and are therefore realized and know how things truly exist, and those who haven't, who are like children who don't understand the true nature of reality and live in foolish and silly suffering ways where they pursue suffering and, you know, avoid virtue. So anyone who's reached path number 3 is an Arya. Anyone who's reached the path of seeing is an Arya. Okay? Anyone who's seen emptiness directly is an Arya. And there are two parts to that perception, right? The first part where you're in deep meditation, say perhaps 20 minutes long. And the second part where you start to come out of the experience, right? So immediately subsequent to that experience, when you're starting to come out of that experience, right, then you begin to experience the second part of the path of seeing. And that lasts probably, well, approximately 24 hours, it's said. Okay? And so for that 24-hour period, one is having a series of quite amazing and special realizations and insights. So the path of seeing doesn't only include the direct perception of ultimate reality. When one comes out of the direct perception of ultimate reality, there's a whole series of follow-on realizations, and there's a whole series of follow-on perceptions and experiences that one goes through. Okay? And all of those are included in the path of seeing. So those understandings are grouped into 4 major realizations, or the 4 Arya truths. There are 4 truths or realizations that one sees after they come out of the direct communion with ultimate reality. Okay? And so you see those 4 facts when you come out of the direct experience of ultimate reality, and seeing those 4 facts enable you to put a stop to your suffering permanently and attain nirvana. Okay? The 4 Arya truths, experiencing the 4 Arya truths directly when you come out of the experience of emptiness, will enable you to permanently put an end to your mental afflictions and attain nirvana. Okay? And so there's not just 4, there are many aspects that go on during the day, right? Like, for example, you see and you realize directly that all of the books in the Buddhist canon are true. Something like 300,000 books in the Buddhist canon, and you see directly and you have the realization that they're true. You know, in that brief moment, one sees in that one day that 300,000 texts, you know, are accurate, the entire contents. And so there are all these incredible details that come to a person when they have the realizations. And when one sees those things and goes through those things, one can reach a state called nirvana. If someone attains nirvana, would you know it? I mean, could the person be sitting next to you have achieved nirvana?
Yeah.
Sure. Why? I mean, why? It's a mental state. We're just talking about a mental state, right? We're talking about someone who has ended every suffering in their mind, every problem in their mind, every affliction in their mind, right? And their mind is completely, blissed out all the time, right? I mean, they might not complain as much. It might be obvious in that respect, right? But you could reach to nirvana tonight, and we wouldn't necessarily know, unless we can read your mind, right? I mean, I don't know who you are, so it's a mental thing, and so that's how one attains nirvana. If one is able to have the feeling of bodhicitta in one's mind and heart, when one has the direct experience of ultimate reality, then one does not attain nirvana. Okay. If one has this very sweet feeling of bodhicitta when they're perceiving emptiness, then they attain full enlightenment. They can attain full enlightenment, right? So, what's the difference between nirvana and enlightenment?
Omniscience.
You have bodhicitta to attain enlightenment. Nirvana is mental, right? So, in enlightenment, you end all of your mental afflictions and suffering with full enlightenment. You also gain omniscience, but then there's the other component, which is your body, right? You end up with a completely pure body and mind when you're fully enlightened, right? It's not just a mental event, right? Nirvana is a mind free of afflictions, right? So there's the transformation of both your body and mind when you attain enlightenment, all right? In nirvana, you get rid of your bad thoughts permanently. But then with enlightenment, your body fully transforms also, and your mind goes first. There's like when you reach the final path, you have a millisecond. Your mind, for a millisecond, leads your body, where the mind becomes enlightened and omniscient, and then the body completely transforms to another type of body. And so the mind is able to see every object that ever existed, or will exist, or does exist in the universe in that instant. Every moment, every second, an enlightened mind perceives all of the past, present, and future simultaneously in all realms, all times, and all places. So, a little hard to kind of understand. In Hinduism, they have this idea of Indra's net. I don't know too much about it, but I like the metaphor. Heard it from Joseph Campbell. The idea of Indra's net is that they have this, it's like a vast, call it a three-dimensional grid or fishing net, and at each intersecting point there's a jewel, like a diamond, and each node reflects every other node, and so the entire thing is reflecting everything else. I like it. I don't know, it's got nothing to do with Buddhism, but I like it. I mean, it helps my mind. So it's this state of mind which is very difficult to describe, which is omniscient, and being omniscient means it's able to perceive every instant of every moment of the infinite past, present, and future simultaneously at any given time. Difficult to wrap my mind around. And then there's the other component of it, which is that every object in the universe has its own emptiness, right? And therefore, an enlightened mind, which is perceiving every object in the universe, has a very special type of emptiness associated with it. And so when you see emptiness for the first time directly, in fact, you are seeing the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. You're seeing what's called the Dharmakaya. And so the direct perception of emptiness is also the direct experience of part of an enlightened being, of the mind of an enlightened being. And so we'll talk about it more, but one realizes via the direct perception of emptiness and coming out of it that one has experienced a Buddha's mind. So you see that directly, and one becomes an enlightened being and a Buddha oneself. When one becomes enlightened, one has the capacity to emanate countless bodies anywhere instantaneously. And it's without premeditation. So normally when we think of, well, I'm going to be over there, we think, I got to get over there. Or we're meditating and visualizing, we think, okay, I'm going to emanate a copy of myself over there, right? But when one becomes enlightened and one attains an enlightened form, that form spontaneously emanates to all realms and all planets and all beings without any premeditation, without any effort, without even having to think about it. It's just a natural and spontaneous arising. And any being that has the purity and the goodness and the karma and virtue to perceive it will perceive void being. So that's another quality of an enlightened body. It just shows up automatically. Every planet in the universe is emanating. And so that's the path of no more learning. And if you have bodhicitta in your mind at the moment of attaining the path of no more learning, then one attains an enlightened state where one emanates manifestations everywhere instantly without premeditation. So bodhicitta seems like an important idea, right? Kind of an important concept. If you're going to make it to full enlightenment, we need to be clear about this bodhicitta thing, right? So we'll talk about the definition of bodhicitta that Maitreya gave. And Maitreya is an expert in bodhicitta because he's the Buddha. So he gives a definition in the Abhismayalamkara, which is on the board. You say Semke Pani.
Semke Pani.
Shendun Chir.
Shendun Chir.
Yangdak Zope.
Yangdak Zope.
Janchup Du.
Janchup Du.
Semkapani means bodhicitta, the wish for enlightenment. Ni means is. Shendun Chir means for the sake of all other beings. Yangdak Zope Janchu means total enlightenment. And Du means one to reach. So the definition of the wish for enlightenment is the desire to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all other beings. Right? So it's extremely difficult to reach real bodhicitta. And if one did it in this life, it would be an incredible accomplishment, a tremendous achievement. So there's a profound description that Holy Geshe Michael has given of what it's like to experience bodhicitta at the path of seeing. And path number 3. And we're talking about a very specific instance of bodhicitta now, right? We're talking about bodhicitta one has at the path of seeing in conjunction with the direct perception of emptiness or ultimate reality, right? Which is not the general bodhicitta that we normally speak about. So it's a very special instance. So you say Nyamshak, Yeshe.
Yeshe.
Nyamshak means an extremely deep state of meditation, and Yeshe is wisdom. So to see emptiness directly, you have to be at a certain stage in meditation. There's a certain meditative platform that one has to be able to attain. Okay? And if you can't get there, if your mind isn't able to reach that place, then you can't perceive emptiness, you can't perceive ultimate reality. Okay? If the mind isn't on that platform, which is very difficult to reach, then it's not possible to have the perception of ultimate reality. Okay? Totally impossible to perceive emptiness with the mind in the wrong place, on the wrong platform. The mind has to be set up and functioning in a particular way, at a particular level of reality, to perceive that level of reality, right? So, if you think about it just in a common sense way, this apparent ordinary level of reality, the mind can't be functioning here and operating here, or this is what it would be perceiving, right? I mean, common sense, eh? So, for the mind to be perceiving another level of reality, it has to be abiding at that level of reality and functioning at that level of reality, meaning have the appropriate level of subtlety and focus and stillness such that it's able to function and perceive at that level of reality. Our minds are functioning and perceiving at this level of reality based upon a certain level of coarseness and crudeness and lack of clarity and affliction and everything else. I mean, a mind which functions with the afflictions that we have and the lack of clarity and focus that we have is what produces the perception of this realm for us. So we'll never perceive another level of reality while our mind is functioning the way it normally does in this realm. Just it's obviously incompatible, right? They're different things. Okay. So so how do we get the mind to a place where it can function in an appropriate way at an appropriate other level of reality? Any guesses? Practice meditation. You gotta meditate. You gotta meditate appropriately. You have to meditate enough. We have to train our minds to be still enough and focused enough and subtle enough and clean enough to get to that place, to have that perception of that other reality, right? And so if we're not meditating daily on a regular basis, an hour or two per day, our minds will not be able to function in the way that they need to perceive that other level of reality. It requires a certain subtlety of mind. It requires a certain clarity, cleanliness of mind, maybe not the right way to say it, but purity of mind, lack of affliction and non-virtue in the mind, right? The mind has to be clean enough and pure enough and still enough and focused enough to perceive this other thing. And it doesn't just happen accidentally and randomly. It happens through training, right? And so we have to set about consciously and intentionally training the mind to be able to do that. That's all, So if you want to disqualify yourself from ever perceiving ultimate reality and ending your suffering forever, if you want to disqualify yourself from reaching enlightenment, then don't train your mind and don't meditate, and you'll be guaranteed to not do it, right? I mean, if you just want to function at this level of reality, then just let your mind function at this level of reality all the time, and you'll just be here until you die, and then who knows where you'll be, right? Probably, and we won't. That was another class, right? We went into that in another class. So if we don't meditate for an hour to a day, it's impossible for us to see emptiness directly. We have to reach a meditation where our mind is clear enough and stable enough and focused enough to see emptiness. And every Buddhist school says that. According to every Buddhist school, that's the case. Right? Are you waving at me?
No, it's waving at the computer. So.
Okay. Okay, so Nyamshak Yeshe, the first 20 minutes or so of the path of seeing, right, which is the pure, direct, non-conceptual perception of emptiness, right? All you can see at that moment is emptiness, right? Not possible to have any other thoughts, right? Can't be aware that you're even there seeing emptiness. I mean, if I'm sitting there meditating and I'm going like, here I am, looking at emptiness, I can't be seeing emptiness. Because the awareness of me is a concept. The notion of John, the awareness of this mind and this body sitting here, those are all conceptual elaborations. Don't exist in ultimate reality. So one has to be able to meditate at a level and in a way where one has moved beyond that. One is functioning in a more subtle state. You're not even aware of yourself there seeing emptiness because you can't say I'm here and I did it. It's inconsistent. So one is unaware of the passage of time. One is unaware of oneself. One is just having a pure, direct communion of another reality, right? So all the concepts we have are positive all the identities we use. The things we normally think are positive constructs. I'm John, that's a positive construct. I'm meditating, that's a positive construct. In ultimate reality and in emptiness, those positive constructs don't exist. There's the absence of all that. So you could say it's a negative state and that it lacks any constructs. Not a negative state in a bad suffering way, just this absence, absence of constructs, right? So one is in a total, direct, singular perception of emptiness, and that's all you're aware of, for that period of time, for 20 minutes or however long it lasts, until you start to come out. And then when you start to come out of the experience of communing with ultimate reality, then you begin to start to have sensations and other insights. And so the first feeling Geshe Michael says is this feeling of descending or coming down, like you're coming down from a higher place. And the reason for that is your mind is actually coming down from that platform to this, back to this realm. The mind is actually in a different realm, having that perception and that awareness. And so it's a sensation of the mind coming back to the desire realm. So the mind is temporarily in another realm, and it's coming back to this desire realm and to awareness and perception of this desire realm, right? So you have the sense of coming down from the platform that you were on when you saw emptiness directly. So some kind of physical sensation of coming down, which is followed by this great joyous thought or feeling of, I did it, I saw emptiness, wow, I did it. So, and then then the conceptual mind starts to kick in. Like if you meditate much, when you come out of your deep, subtle meditation, it's not atypical that you'll come out of meditation and the conceptual mind won't even start right away. You could be done with your meditation practice and you could be sitting there with your eyes open and the conceptual mind won't necessarily even have arisen yet. One could be sitting there at the end of one's meditation practice mentally aware, but the conceptual mind is not yet started back up to then supply its chatter and elaboration, to say, oh, that's the altar over there. Oh, here I am sitting here, or whatever the case might be, So the mind is functioning in a much more subtle way. Okay, so we begin conceptualizing again, and so you're no longer obviously seeing emptiness, right? If you're conceptualizing and starting to have thoughts, then you're no longer in that real, direct experience of higher reality. You're back at this level of conceptual reality. But you remember what you saw. We have a mental picture or a memory or some kind of idea or image, I shouldn't say image, some idea of what one saw, right? And so you remember what you saw, you realize that you saw the Dharmakaya, the mind of a Buddha, of an enlightened being, and you're aware that, wow, Buddhas do exist. I saw a Buddha. I know for a fact that Buddhas do exist. Right? So one starts to have these other realizations and these other understandings, right? One of them is the confirmation that Buddhas do exist. And so Buddhism is true. You think, wow, I've confirmed it. I've confirmed that Buddhism is true. There are Buddhas, and the path works, and I know it for a fact, and I've experienced it directly, right? And then one also has a direct experience and perception of one's own future lives, and one sees one's future lives, and how many lives one will have prior to becoming enlightened. And if you think about the 5 paths, the path of seeing is path number 3. You still have to go through the path of habituation, right? So after you've perceived ultimate reality, you have to do the work of cleaning up all the old negative karma and becoming a pure being, collecting the causes for enlightenment during the path of habituation. So it may take several lifetimes to do that work, which is fairly short relative to infinite time. Not too bad. You might say, what do you mean more lifetimes? I finally made it to seeing emptiness and I have more lifetimes of work to do. Come on, it's not fair. But in the scheme of things, it's pretty short, right? So 7, they say, is typical. It's also an important realization to see that you'll achieve Buddhahood. You see yourself achieving Buddhahood in the 7th life, for example, and you're aware of the quality and content of your future lives. And it's an important realization you have that you have to just kind of think about and cook a little bit, which is that they don't call you by your name anymore. They don't call you Hector anymore. And so you have this realization that you're not Hector anymore. And so that's an important realization. So you have a valid perception or a pramana that what you perceived is correct. So that's a sort of a secondary realization. You have the realization of emptiness. You have the direct perception of the Dharmakaya, of an enlightened being's mind. You have the direct perception of your future lives and your own enlightenment. And then you have a follow-on realization or perception, or it's called pramana, valid perception, that everything that you saw was true and was correct and was not some kind of crazed mind or delusion or hallucination or something like that. You have a valid perception that everything you saw was true, and you know for a fact that everything that you saw was true, and you have a second perception of that comes after the direct perception of emptiness. Right? So the emotion of doubt, doubt about one's spiritual path, doubt about one's practice, is eliminated forever. It's one of the few afflictions which is completely destroyed and eliminated as a result of the direct perception of emptiness. Right? Because one has perceived these things, one can no longer have any doubt. It doesn't matter what somebody says to you, you know, my spirituality is better than your spirituality, and I'm right and you're wrong, you know, because you know for a fact, you've seen it, direct valid perception, right? So you've seen future lives, you've seen your enlightenment, you've seen the Buddha, and you know you're not crazy. So you have this total elimination of doubt as a result of these realizations and these perceptions. So doubt about the Buddhist path cannot occur after the path of seeing. There's absolute certainty in one's mind. So, and it's one of the few mental afflictions which is totally destroyed on that path. So if you already had familiarity with bodhicitta at that point, right? If you have already developed bodhicitta to some extent when you see emptiness directly, then during the aftermath, during the period of the 4 Arya truths, then you start to have these other incredible things happen. In addition to the ability to read other people's minds, for the period of something like 24 hours, you can read other people's minds clearly. But if you're on the Mahayana track, and if you have bodhicitta, you get the experience of bodhicitta, of real bodhicitta at that moment. Okay? Jeto Byeshe. Please say Jeto Byeshe. And this is subsequent wisdom, wisdom that comes after the direct perception of emptiness. Okay? It's this extraordinary experience that lasts a minute or two, where one has bodhicitta in one's heart. And it's like this intense, blissful sensation, this amazing, intense, blissful sensation that one has, and that lasts a few minutes. And there's a sensation of a stream coming out of one's heart, like a column of crystal light coming out of one's heart and reaching out and touching all of the beings existing in all the realms of all the universes, and coming out of your heart and just reaching out to every living being and touching them. And you have that direct experience at that moment, and that's true bodhicitta and real bodhicitta. Holy Geshe Michael describes it as like a column of crystal light, and says that you can see the face of every living being in all realms of existence simultaneously in an instant. So as part of that experience of bodhicitta, of true bodhicitta, and that for the rest from that moment on, and for the rest of your life, you know that you will spend every moment working for every living being to help them in whatever way you can. And that's real bodhicitta. You know that you have 6 lives or 7 lives left, and you know that for the rest of those 7 lives, all you'll do is work to help those living beings. And everything that you do and every experience you have, all of the relationships you form, all of the money you get, will be directed at one thing, which is helping other people. And it's an extraordinary experience and an extraordinary sensation, this beautiful, sweet feeling. And there's a list of the benefits of of bodhicitta in the reading, which you have to know for your homework, but it's in the reading. You can pick it up from the reading. But really what happens at that moment is the point, which is there's this incredible, ecstatic experience and sweetness and beauty of loving and caring for every being in existence, and seeing each of them directly and feeling that heart connection with all of them, right? And so, one will never want, what's that? One knows that for all one's future lives, one sees one's future lives and one knows that one will never have any problem, one will never have any meaningful wants or needs, one will always be born into circumstances with great parents, great schooling, in an area where there's Dharma, where there's great Dharma teachers, and that you'll have everything you need. So you see directly that for the rest of your existence you'll never have any significant problem, and you'll always have fortunate circumstances until you're complete enlightenment. So it's a very beautiful and sweet experience. And then, you know, the ultimate feeling that one can have is that one is just going to live for other people, to help every other living being, and that's the purpose of the remainder of one's days and all their future lives, and that there's some kind of extraordinary relief or release that comes with that one is no longer going to just watch out for oneself and put oneself first and always think about oneself before everyone else. There's this tremendous feeling of being released from that small, closed self-centeredness, and this feeling of, you know, ultimate love and ultimate compassion and ultimate connection to every living being, where one is just loving and working for everyone all the time. And so it's this very blissful release. From that moment on, you won't be a prisoner of this kind of small attitude anymore. And all of the work and all of the effort of all the years, everything that you ever did in your life is worth it for that 1 or 2 minute experience of true bodhicitta and true ultimate love and compassion and connection to every living being. So even if we haven't had that full-on experience, we can get some sense that it really is a profound thing. We can get some kind of perhaps inkling of what it would be like to stop feeling selfish or thinking about ourselves all the time. You know, there's some kind of really sweet feeling that we get when we help someone else. You know, I helped that person in need and I feel really good. You know, I gave that person money when they needed. You know, I mean, if we tune into our own personal experiences just in this life, we can confirm directly that it feels really good to help people, and we feel really happy when we do loving, kind acts to others, right? And so, you know, you can extrapolate and think, well, if I never had another selfish thought in my mind, and if all I was doing was helping people all the time, imagine having this sweet, beautiful, happy sensation and feeling all the time, right? So up until the moment where we get true bodhicitta, it's a little frustrating because everything we do is infected by our own selfishness. Everything that we engage in, even helping others, there's some undercurrent of, what will I get out of it, or will I benefit in some way, or will it inconvenience me too much, or is it worth it? You know, is it worth the trade-off? However you want to think about that, right? So at the moment, though, we get at the moment of experiencing true bodhicitta, there's some kind of liberation from all that. You know, there's some kind of release and freedom and liberation from all of that, and it's a very sweet experience. So, and it's something that you know, we can confirm now just by tuning into helping people and how we feel when we help people. So we have a taste of the sweetness now, and with true bodhicitta, then we have this direct experience that we're going to spend the rest of our life that way. We're going to spend every moment of every day of the rest of our existence that way, taking care of other people. And so it's some kind of extraordinary experience which has a lot of fallout effects and a lot of impact upon our being and upon our mind stream and upon our karmas, in fact. One of the fallout effects, one of the impacts of experiencing this true bodhicitta and this ultimate love and compassion and awareness that one is devoting the rest of one's existence to helping all beings, is that any negative karma, any significant negative karma that we have, is destroyed and done forever. Any major negative karma we have is destroyed by true bodhicitta, and it's completely finished. So that emotion destroys any major negative karmas that we have remaining. So any powerful bad deeds that we've collected in the infinite past, which could have led us to a lower realm, have been destroyed, and it's no longer possible to take rebirth in a lower realm ever. So it's just not possible anymore. So if all you ever want to do is avoid the hells, then, you know, get real bodhicitta, right? It's impossible after that. And you know it. You have a direct experience and a direct realization of that. So, you're on your way out. You know what your next 7 lives are going to be. Because you're on your way out, you're called a stream enterer. That's where the term stream enterer comes from, right? And it's some kind of release, to know it. I mean, you feel this urge. There's this sensation of, I'm done. I have no major problems ever again in my entire existence. And it doesn't matter what anybody does to me. It doesn't matter what anybody says to me. I'm good. And so there's this incredible urge to want to help people and want to show this to people and teach this to people. And additionally, an awareness that the teachings in Buddhist books are true. And so there's this tremendous urge to protect the teachings and protect the books, and to share them with other people, and to teach them to other people, and to help other people learn these things, to reach it themselves, right? And that's one of the emotions that arises after one has the experience of true bodhicitta. Okay, so we overcome selfishness, and it's impossible to drop to lower realms, and you know it. And so that's some kind of extraordinary, amazing feeling to have that certainty, right? I mean, to be aware that we'll be a Buddha, to know it, to see it, right? To know that we'll be a being that can just sit there and instantaneously emanate bodies to countless planets without even thinking about it, right? To help countless beings in all realms, and to have this extraordinary feeling of some kind of highest form of bliss, right? To have some sense of this incredible, intense, ecstatic bliss, right? Which occurs at that moment, and to have that experience. I mean, imagine the feeling of, I'm just this blissful being who's just helping every other being in the universe continuously, I mean, what an amazing feeling, right? And so you know that you're going to be like that. It's this incredible experience and this incredible awareness. It feels really good. So, instead of being like this grubby little selfish person who's always like, me, I need, what about my food, what about my apartment, what about my clothes, what about my job, what about my money, what about my bank account, what about my love, what about my, getting my needs met, what about getting gratified, what about getting off, what about getting everything, it's this thing of, wow, not going to be that kind of person anymore. I'm just going to have ultimate love towards everyone all the time, and I'm going to be blissed out and happy forever. That's pretty cool. Not bad, right? So, I'll take it. Right? So I think let's take a break on that note. Enjoy some more Valentine's hearts and whatever other snacks are there. And when we come back, we'll talk about 2 kinds of bodhicitta.